Well, it all started back in 1973 when I married Dick Fitzgerald. It was a big venture to get married at 21. It became an even bigger venture as life went on. So when I got married in 73, I had David arrived in 74, and we spent many hours working in the garden, picking strawberries, weeding strawberries in the summertime, with potatoes and cabbages and a few cattle, and in the wintertime, Brussels sprouts. It was very enjoyable for a few years, but could I see it as being my future? Not really. So I opened my doors in 1977 to a 3-bedroom. We had a 4-bedroom house, so 3 bedrooms for the guests, 1 bedroom for ourselves, and we all shared the same bathroom. So that was phenomenal. We got great reaction. There was no restaurant in there at the time, so I started doing evening meals for people. And the fun thing about it was this, that in the beginning I might be doing leg of lamb for everybody, but as the numbers grew, as they did, I was offering a choice of lamb or salmon, or beef or salmon. And that's how I started to get involved in the whole cookery business. I loved what I did, so I went to America in 1979, and I saw the concept of rooms en suite. And I came home and I built 12 bedrooms in 1981. I started the week that Connor was born. The day that Connor was born, I actually started the foundation of my first block of bedrooms in 1981. 12 bedrooms en suite, unheard of in a farmhouse. We had the edge. We always liked to have the edge. I always liked having the edge. We were doing great, absolutely fantastic business. The Americans were pouring in to see the manor. We had first night stop, last night stop, so everything was good. And our parlour was big enough to be able to take the guests for dinner. So I would cook and my husband, late husband, Dick, would serve. It was a great combination, and the children were running around the place, so it was a really happy days for us because we were able to have the privilege of working and raising our family together. So I started off, my first protocol was the Board Falta at the time, and their advice to me was, it was an arduous task. We were in the middle of nowhere, and more or less, we were only a mile and a half from it there, but in their eyes it was the middle of nowhere. There was no tourist business built around it there. It was, if you weren't in Killarney or Tralee, you weren't a runner. Even Galway, Dublin wasn't a runner at the time either. So it was all negative anyway, so no, they told me I was better off minding my children and to forget about it. But Mary doesn't forget things like that. Then they kind of dismissively said, well, you could go about it, engage an architect, which they recommended, and the architect cost me over £10,000 at the time, which was a savage amount of money. And after I had all that done, of course, I was refused planning permission. That was my savings. Life got into this. Board Falta didn't stand behind us. The planning people said no. Same thing, middle of nowhere, blah, blah, blah. So it was not a runner either. But of course, I was pursuing, and I used every avenue to fight my way, including tears, blood, sweat, footwork, getting to know all the people that were involved, trying to get encouragement. But the only thing I suppose was that we had even still a good standing name in the locality because of the fact that we were already trading in Brussels sprouts and strawberries, and people knew us. So that was encouraging for us. So in tandem with all that, then I approached the bank and I asked them for a loan, told them my thoughts or whatever. And I can still remember where I stood in my B&B when the bank manager said, my dear woman, the hotels of the country are closing down. Best stay at home, mind your children, forget about it. So that even made me more determined than ever. My husband he was always fully behind me, but he always let me do all the talking. So that's how I ended up fighting the case as always, but he was 100% behind me and fought with me hand in hand, side by side. So eventually, after a good year and a bit fighting the cause, I eventually made a compromise with the planning people, and they gave me planning permission to trade with the restaurant that I already had. And yes, we could have a dispensed bar license. They would grant us planning permission, but not for the function room that we wanted. So I had to take a lot less, but it was a start. So I now know what it's like to start and build from there. But I find it very hard to believe that in this very spot, in this field, 46 years ago, when I started to first harvest the strawberries with my late husband Dick, it was in this field, I believe it was a very, very long field. And we started off at the top, right down to the bottom, picking strawberries. It was a fairly difficult task. But the weather was nice, and it seemed like it was just, the strawberries were such a beautiful, fresh crop, and it was a joy to behold. And even I remember we had David, he was only a small baby in the pram, bouncing on top of it, full of joy, as he watched both his parents work in the garden. You know, you're always close to nature. You always find great sense of satisfaction. Always, food is always very important to me. We learned about the sophistication of strawberries from Dick and his family, because we never knew what it was in County Limerick much to be able to grow strawberries. We grew the basics, potatoes, cabbages and whatever, but his family grew the strawberries in Kerry and supplied them to the hotels in Killarney. And they were at the tourism game looking after people long before it was even thought of in County Limerick. So I really, really very pleasant memories of my time in the garden, in the summertime especially, but the winter was difficult. We used to grow Brussels sprouts, which are another very sophisticated crop people didn't really know much about. But Dick picked the Brussels sprouts and I weighed them into pound packets, and we supplied them to Dunn stores and all these people, so they had to be washed and more or less ready for the table and weighed into pound packs. So when Dick picked them at night, I spent my evening times weighing them into pound bags. It was a very hard job. My fingers were sore from knocking the plastic bags, but that's the way it was. And we made some very nice money out of them, and gave us a nice start in our married life, if we were just after starting off in our married life. So the garden was always very close to our hearts. Even as a child, my father had a garden, and I loved being in the garden, weeding, picking, harvesting, digging the potatoes for the dinner, bringing the heads of cabbage. There was a great sense of freshness and quality about when you knock out the earth and knock out the potatoes. It was absolutely fantastic. So close to nature.